We are Rogue Media Sports.
Is this house a good price compared to others in the area? Are prices going up or down? If I don't make an offer right this very moment, will I miss my chance? These are just some of the questions a home buyer might ask. And these are the sorts of questions an agent who is a Realtor can help answer. Because Realtors have the expertise, data, and access to specialty training to help you navigate the process of buying a home. They provide support, guidance, and have your back every step of the way. That's what Realtors do, because that's who we are. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors.
Hey, it's Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, Record Store Day founder Carrie Colleton is joining us to discuss the April 20th RSD special releases.
Plus, we'll talk live with our audience, the Sound Up Pod Squad, and find out who still listens to vinyl. And some updates from the Beatles universe.
Oh, good. Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
It is the Doomsday podcast, live for the Frito Nation production studios in far north Dallas. And
really far north Dallas for me.
that's right, coming from Flower Mound.
Is the casino nearby? Choctaw? I think it is, just across the street.
This is very much within North Dallas. Maybe Allen qualifies. Although, big news today, by the way. Allen's coach up and quit. Okay, it is time to talk about the Cowboys and their rookie, what do we call it now?
Rookie orientation camp, according to Mike McCarthy.
That just does not have a ring to it. Hey, Ed, you want to go out to the rookie orientation?
I'm going to wait for the rookie minicamp.
Yeah, I wanted a minicamp, and what we saw was an orientation. And
so we didn't see the orientation part. We just saw the football part.
Yeah, but I think the football is part of the orientation. Yeah, I mean, that's like what they're calling
the reason
orientation.
He doesn't call it orientation or doesn't call it minicamp and calls it orientation instead is because they spend time, he said, helping them create bank accounts and find, a place to live. Like, most of these guys aren't going to be here, when they come back from Oxnard.
Yeah. I don't need to know about bank accounts. I need help with bank accounts.
I think you need help with living arrangements from what I hear.
Wait, what's going on in my living arrangement?
I don't know. If you don't know, I'm not telling you. I've read some things in the Waco paper, but they may or may not be true. I don't know.
Gosh. It was fun to be back out there, though, and one of the things, and we'll give you some of our observations. Over the years, Ed and I have developed a keen eye for what happens at one of these rookie get-togethers and what we see in some of these youngsters. And they had some players that had a little experience, were maybe in their second year. They had a few people out there running around. But, Ed, it was just nice to be back in, like, the Cowboys locker room, and there was a real sense of normalcy out there, and everybody was having a nice time, and this was the most normal situation from a Cowboys being at the Star we've had in a long, long time.
Well, it's the first time in the Mike McCarthy era, which obviously predates the pandemic slightly, that we've been allowed to go into the locker room, which is a place we frequented multiple times a week under normal circumstances. So, and there was a lot of concern, I think, about among journalists about whether NFL teams would ever reopen their locker rooms, and I don't think the NFL Players Association was a big advocate of allowing us back in again. But thankfully, the league and the teams recognize the value of reporters speaking directly to players. And credit to the Cowboys and other teams, because I thought they did a remarkable job creating access through the safest means possible the last 2 years. But I think there's a lot of value to viewers and followers of a team to have reporters back in the locker room.
It was nice, and it allowed.
Even though there was only 3 players in the locker room today when we were in there, but we got the benefit of an audience with Tyler Smith, the first-round pick.
Yeah, coming up today, an exclusive with Tyler Smith, an exclusive with Will McClay, who puts the board together and is obviously the top scout that the Cowboys have in the organization. And so it was a lot of good stuff that we're ready to share with you. Frito, if you would now, please play the music. All right, Doomsday Podcast, and Ed Werder, Matt Mosley, along with Frito Friedman, and we're gathered today. And I really, Ed, I thought watching the players, of course, what they always do at one of these rookie camps or even OTAs, they put the linemen as far away as possible. So I hope you noticed I kind of went over and tried to get a better angle because I wanted to see what Tyler Smith kind of looked like even from afar. We finally got to see a few drills. I guess they had enough out there to actually do some 11-on-11 later in practice. And we'll start with him. I want to get your observations, Ed, from just being out there. I wanted to kind of see for myself, it's interesting. He was going to wear 73 like Larry Allen. We'll hear from Tyler Smith here in a little bit. But I just wanted to kind of see what he looked like, how he moved. My first thought was he's more, I thought, because maybe it was because of all those penalties he had, I thought he was going to be kind of a massive guy, and for whatever reason, I came away thinking he's a little bit more proportional than I thought. I was thinking Larry Allen, monstrous human being, and while compared to the two of us, he's monstrous. I thought he looked good. And I thought he moved well, and it was just kind of interesting to watch him at guard and keep thinking in my mind, this guy didn't do that. Now, what we'll talk about later is there was a time in his career where he did play some guard. But I would say, Ed, that first of all, I don't want to go down all my observations yet, but I just thought from watching...
Because then you won't have anything to say for the following 15 minutes.
Correct.
You go through all your observations.
Correct. But I thought the movement was good, but I thought it was funny to think that's the future. That's supposed to be the future at left tackle. And at left tackle today, they put out another draft pick, and that was Matt Waletzko.
That's the player who was drafted with a pick acquired from the Browns for Amari Cooper.
Yeah.
That will be his claim to fame, especially if he fails.
That's right. And he had a false start today, but other than that, looked okay. 6'8",
I think
huge,
long Tyler
arms.
flinched next to him and induced him into a penalty because Tyler obviously has a reputation for having a lot of penalties. But
best case scenario, this is the next Doug Free. As far as when we're talking about, because Doug Free was an incredibly tall guy from that part of the world.
Yeah. Well, to your point, I would agree that was the first thing I thought of when you asked my observation of him was, you get so used to seeing Tyron Smith, who's just a freak. I mean, he's built like Zeus, or something like that. I know there are other left tackles who have had that nickname, some of them in the Hall of Fame, and this guy probably will be too, but he's not built at all like that. He's not a 6'6", really muscular, inverted pyramid of a guy. He is built, to me, more like a guard, which is the position he's going to probably try to play as a rookie. And I don't think you can tell one thing about how good these guys are or how they fit or what their first year is going to be like, much less what kind of player they're going to be their whole career from what we saw today, right? They didn't really do anything that allows you to determine their value as a football player and what ability they have in football. I mean, they weren't in pads. They were just in shorts. There's no rookies or no veterans around to intimidate them. That'll happen next week. But I mean, from everybody else's the people who were paid to make these observations, like Mike McCarthy and Will McClay, they talked about his foot quickness and his ability to assimilate what he needs to do to convert to guard. Were very impressive. I thought it was noteworthy that he played left guard almost exclusively, even though McCarthy has described him as being a left side of the offensive line player. And I think the reason he has said that is my sense is that because of Tyron Smith's health issues, he's missed at least 3 games for the last 5 years and missed multiple games last year, almost the whole entire season the year before, is that they're really going to carefully manage his snaps in training camp throughout the offseason, even in practices during the season. I think he's only going to, I think they're expecting like 45, 50% of the snaps. And so that means that Tyler Smith would get some of those snaps. And so he could kick out to left tackle as a rookie if Tyron Smith is missing games because of injury. And if not, I think they would expect that he's going to be their starting left guard. And I don't know at what point you want to get into what people think of him. But obviously there were a lot of people who, Jerry Jones was defensive enough about the criticism he was hearing from Tyler Smith that he actually held up part of their draft board during one of the press conferences right after they made the pick at 24, and feeling he needed to justify it by showing that, hey, we had him listed over 2 other guys who went ahead of him, I think people lose that might be true, but the reality is they had all 3 of those players, Kenyon Green, very, very closely rated. And if it hadn't been for Green's injury history, if he had been available, I think they might have preferred him.
Yeah, I think that's right. I thought you had an interesting question that'll come up in our interview with Will McClay about some of the other teams. There were so many NFC East picks before the Cowboys, and I think that'll be kind of interesting to see. And I kind of liked how Will McClay's attitude with us today. I think he was excited to see us, but also kind of amped up. I mean, I think for the scouts, when they put that much work in to get out there on that first weekend when you have the guys on campus, that's a meaningful time for them. And as far as I could tell, there was only one interview that took place with Will McClay today, and it happened here on the Doomsday podcast. Now, I am interested. We'll get to Will in a second. And I want to hear from some of the people you've talked to about Tyler. And we can do that a little bit later if we need to.
After his interview.
Yeah. I think we should do that after the interview. And I've got a couple things that I want to say about him as well. But I'll tell you what we'll do right now. The vice president of player personnel is Will McClay. And he was out there. I think we saw Jerry.
I did not see Jerry.
I saw him. He walked out there, and of course he'll have the rest of the weekend to attend some practice if he wants. He had some guy that accompanied him, and then the man who accompanied him, who I didn't recognize, kind of a little fire plug of a man, turned around and left Jerry alone, and he just stood on that other practice field for a little while. I don't think he ever joined everybody else, and then he took off. But Will McClay, after practice, spent some time with the Doomsday podcast, and here is that interview.
So, Will, today your rookie minicamp starts. You had a chance to look at the guys that you've drafted and signed as rookie free agents. What impression did the first-round pick make on you today, Tyler Smith?
Well, his eagerness and his athletic ability. We're going through the drills. You see the quickness off of the ball. You see the willingness to want to put your body on somebody, even if we're in these conditions without the pad. So you see the football player and you see the athlete.
How closely graded were those top 3 guys? I mean, Jerry obviously held up the chart to everyone's horror and saw where your board was, where Tyler Smith was genuinely above both of those players. But I think the grades were fairly close. But what put him above those other guys in your mind?
I think it's the youth, the upside, the athleticism, and the ability. When you pick a guy that early, you want to be able to keep him, and you want to grow, and you want to have a starter for a long time. So we see those traits in him.
It's interesting. A lot of times we go, getting your first round, it needs to start immediately. Y'all have an opening here, but it seems like Steven was almost not trying to put too much pressure on him in that regard. How do you kind of view that? Because usually we say, okay, you have an opening, this guy needs to be the starter. It doesn't seem like I'm hearing that about Tyler.
Sometimes you go through this stuff and you put pressure on guys and you put undue pressure on them. What we want to do is have competition. If he earns that opportunity to start, he earns that opportunity to start. And we hope that he does, and we're expecting him to. But it's all about competition to me. It's like, let me bring in the best football players we can, let them compete, and then we'll have the best football team.
When you looked at the tape and thought about the season personally, how big an issue did you see the offensive line being at the end of the year? Not only in the loss of the 49ers, but just the lack of productivity in the offense in general the last 6 games.
Well, I'm not going to say lack of productivity. We ended where we ended up statistically, but at the end of the day, you got to go through and you got to have your people and you got to win those games. We didn't do that at the end, which is why we wanted to add to that, because it all starts up front offensively and defensively for me and for us is, you got to build that thing and keep it strong, because it's a long season, 17 games. COVID and all those things also took a lot of sting out of what we had. So we've just got to build the depth and be strong. And you never know. We're not one player away, and you never know.
want to be a more physical team on offense? Is it safe to say that?
It's football. You got to be a more physical football team, and we want to continue to build that. We want to continue to build, the nasty and the attitude of the football team. That's how you get over the hump and do those things that we need to do.
When you see Sam out here, Sam Williams, and just obviously he's got the great size and everything. Would you kind of see today? I mean, I'm sure when you come out here and watch these guys, it just confirms a lot. You put in all the work, so it's kind of fun to see. But what is your thought about him? And is he another guy you kind of want to take your time with, or does he seem like a guy that can jump right in for you?
Well, after one day, it's hard to say. After one day, it's fresh legs. It's like the first day of school. Everybody wants to know everything on the first day of school. Yeah. But see him out here running, and you see the physical ability, all the traits, and it's like adding another piece to the defense of speed, temperament, athleticism. And we saw out here getting off the ball, how quick he gets off the ball, all those things. It excites you a little bit when we start getting the vets in on Monday and start mixing them in. That's going to be real exciting.
Well, you do have it's fairly easy for a guy like him to find playing time as a pass rusher,
yes.
In a situational role as a rookie, and it's not all that complicated. It's something he's excelled at in his college career, and that opening seems to be there with Randy Gregory signing with Denver, true?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we're always looking for pass rush. This league has turned into so much passing, so when you have somebody that can speed up the quarterback's clock, then that also increases your opportunities for turnovers and, things like that. So adding that element to the defense and then having a role, there's a number of things he can do. You saw him inside a little bit, bouncing around a little bit. So just to kind of get a feel for the tour we got.
How fun is it talking to Dan about kind of what he has a vision for a player, and then you've been scouting and look at these guys for a long time, that whole process, that has to be kind of...
Yeah, it's really cool. It's a unique process in the way that Mike's done it, and then, with the offensive staff and then Dan with the defensive staff, you have a vision for the player. One of the things we do when we want to draft a guy, the coaches, we all have to buy in. The coaches got to have a vision for him and tell us what they see him do. And Dan does a great job of saying, hey, the roles that he can see him play in, the number of plays, the vision, and kind of seeing it, further out and down the line. That really helps us as we try and target players and value guys.
Do you ever look to see what kind of grades that you got in the draft? Do you ever kind of peek around and see what folks are saying, or you just kind of able to ignore that stuff?
I don't. I did it one time early, and I was like, I don't know what they're talking about. And at the end of the day, everybody's got an opinion using, Tyler's quote on the deal. But how can you give a grade when you have no idea what they're going into, what they're doing? And, as human beings, we all get an opportunity to grow and find out what we're all about. And that's what this whole process is all about.
Yeah. So you don't study the Ed Werder mock draft?
No, I don't. Yeah. No, I don't.
I didn't do one this year because I heard Will was not going to look at it.
No. like the mock drafts and stuff, I'll look at. Because guys are getting their information from somewhere, and it does gives you a little bit of idea. I don't think we know everything, and I'll never profess to say that I know everything. But, some of that outside information does help formulate and tell a story, and
where a guy might be on something.
Where a guy might be, because y'all get y'all's information from talking to people. Scouts and coaches in this game, they have a way of not being able to hold their tongue sometimes, and so that you do get some insight from that stuff. And so I look at that, and we kind of, you get a good feel for it.
What about Jalen Tolbert? What opportunity do you see for him for early playing time, and what skills do you most admire about him?
Well, I admire his ability to play inside and outside, and I think he can do that at a high level, and he's smart enough to be able to handle it. He understands spacing. He'll have to get used to the speed of the game, but his ability to play inside and outside, to be able to catch the ball in traffic, and to be able to get deep with some sneaky speed, and then you add that into the group and how Kellen uses him. I'm excited about the upside of him.
And Dak got in touch with him before he was drafted. Sound like you were involved in making that connection a priority. Why?
I just think it's important because, Dak's the leader of this team. And, the players know players really well, and they can pick up on things, and they can understand. And this generation is a little bit different, so I need some help in understanding the generation, and just Dak and how he does and how he communicates with people and his feel for people, and the list of guys that we gave him is, it was important because it's, he can give you a little bit more insight.
Did you just draft one of his guys?
Yeah.
Did you sign any of them as free agents?
Yep.
Oh, some of his other contacts are here too?
I think so. I got to remember the list, but I think we did. I think we did.
What was his report on Jalen after he had the conversation?
Did
he watch tape first and then?
Oh yeah, I mean Dak did his homework, and he wanted to have a background on talking to these guys and what they did. But he, when he came away, he says, all ball. They had some interesting conversations about, books that they'd read, different stuff. So he has his own unique way of finding out who the guys are, and that was really cool to me. It's that he did that, and it's, hey, I'm bringing guys on my team. I want to know who they are, and that's why that was important to me.
For his age, I was just watching him get separation and trying to get off. From a route running standpoint, sometimes it takes guys a while. Just the tiny bit we got to see. It looks very kind of accomplished in that area. Is that one of the things that stood out to y'all when you were watching him and everything?
Yes, it's his body control, it's his ability to stop starts, his ability to run routes, understand leverage, understand where holes and different things are in the defense for a young receiver. Because in college football nowadays, these guys, it's more like find space and sit down. Now, reading coverages and those things is a little bit more difficult for these guys once they come in, but you could see him have those skills, the transition skills, as well as the awareness to be able to play the position inside and outside.
Damone Clark is an interesting guy because I think you guys had him graded as a third-round pick and got him several rounds later because of the questions about this. What he had, a spinal fusion surgery, tough injury for a linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
You see him playing a role this year, or you see this as more of a redshirt year in all likelihood?
I'm not a doctor, but the plan is that, when we get the information from the doctors, it's rolling him through the process when the timing is right. I think that he's hungry, and he's, ever since we drafted him, he's been all on point with communication about what he's doing. The trainers told him to, hey, report in. Well, he reports in twice a day, those sort of things. So football is important to him, and then in the meetings, he's all there. And I'm excited about the opportunity when he does get on the field. I don't have a timetable, but he's the kind of guy that you want on the team.
How good a player was he before the injury?
Really good football player that had all the traits that we were looking for. He can cover back, he can cover tight end, he can blitz, he can play the run, and he's really instinctive, and he's an intense football player. And, when we talked about the competition and the physicality, he had those traits as well as, just being a guy that loves ball.
John Ridgway's the last guy I wanted to ask about. He's kind of a different type of body style pick for you guys. What did you see in him that made that a guy who was desirable to you?
He's nasty. When you play in the NFC East, and we're going to have some nasty battles. Just adding to the nastiness, physicality of our team, being able to control gaps, those sort of things that allow now the athletes, the bigger, faster, stronger guys that we have that we're adding to the defense, allowing them to play off of that. They don't have to worry about those gaps. We're looking for those kind of guys, and then that adds to our ability now to get people to those third down situations and passing situations, those things.
It's funny that we all assume that y'all take a bunch of Arkansas players because of the Joneses, and when you look back at the history, you don't. And it's not like they don't have good players that you like. It just hasn't fallen
that way. Yes. Yeah.
So you finally got a Razorback.
We finally got a Razorback,
after a few years. Regrets on not taking more Baylor players?
I went to Rice, so I'm not going to comment and commit to anything on that. No, Baylor had some good guys that we had, rated, graded at a draftable value, and then people got them early, and it was good. It was exciting to see for Baylor, not for a Rice guy, but for Baylor. Yeah, it was good for y'all.
Last thing before we surrender you to the cafeteria, which awaits.
Burgers.
Wanted to ask you about, you mentioned the division, the competition in the division, the style of play. How hard was it to sit there, even though you dominated the division, so you put yourselves in this position by succeeding against the division, but you had to watch your rivals pick 5 players in the first round before you got to pick, and the Giants apparently took the 2 guys who were first and second on your board. So how do you evaluate what the division did versus what you accomplished in terms of improving your team?
The division got better, we got better, and it's the NFC East. You never know what's going to happen. I know that those teams, our opponents got better, but I think we did too. Now it's how we get together and how we compete on those Sundays when we go against them. They got better, we got better.
Feels like you got a better roster than we did. Could I laminate? I don't know why that is, but yes.
Jerry will show it to us later.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks,
the Doomsday podcast. This will be out there.
Okay.
Hundreds of thousands of downloads. So.
All right, Ed, and I know you were happy that I was at least able to find a Baylor angle there with him. Baylor had 6 draft picks, and I think he did compliment the Bears, but it's. I thought that's funny. I kind of forget that Will went to Rice, and he's obviously, you should be proud of that. It's a great academic school, but I don't know if a lot of. By the way, do you know who's the first Rice Owl you think of when you think of the NFL? Just first Rice Owl. Can you come up with one?
I don't think of one.
Kalu, Indy Kalu. Do you remember him?
Mm-hmm.
And then
I don't think of him.
I think Bert Emanuel was a Rice Owl.
Bert Emanuel, okay,
yeah.
I remember Bert Emanuel.
Yeah, it was a nice athlete and everything. So good visit with Will McClay. One of the names that came up with Will, and we'll get more this tight end I want to talk about a little bit with you, and we'll talk more about our observations as this thing unfolds. They really love the value they found in Sam Williams. One of the things I've noticed, and I thought about it today as the head coach Mike McCarthy was asked about Kelvin Joseph. There's obviously was something that there are allegations against Sam Williams in his time at Ole Miss, and those charges were he was never charged. Basically, is what happened with that. But again, I think that's the reason they were able to get him in the second round. And nobody loves getting value. Oh, first round talent in the second round. Now, I looked because I was like, okay, where is he? He was number 54. And he's got that rangy, and I one of the things that Will talked about with us, Ed, that I think I brought up with him is I think Dan Quinn gives them something a little extra in terms of he's got a vision and he likes to do different things with these players, and they had so much success with Micah Parsons that I think now, and you don't want him to get too tricky or cute, but I think they see this player similarly as a versatile guy that could kind of move inside and that kind of thing. So I think this is another player with a lot of upside. But again, there's a reason they got him in the second round.
Right. And the reason they got him in the second round, like with Randy Gregory or Kelvin Joseph, as you mentioned, and I guess Jalen Smith there were questions about him in the second round, but it was more medical oriented. But, totally. Sam Williams was suspended by Ole Miss in 2020 after being arrested for felony sexual battery. The charges eventually dropped, and he was reinstated to the program. I think they do have a lot of confidence in Dan Quinn, and I think players like Sam Williams want to play for the Cowboys on defense because Dan Quinn is unique in creating a vision for a player and then finding a role that fits that player's skill set. And when I talked to Dan after the draft about, there's obviously playing time available and maybe a significant role with Randy Gregory now being gone to Denver, he totally envisions this first year that Sam Williams is going to be used exclusively as a pass rusher. Second, third down pass rush situations, he'll come off the edge. It's interesting when you listen to them talk about, how quick he is off the ball. I think McCarthy said there were 2 situations today in practice that he came clean off the line and got in the backfield. Again, there's no blocking and so there's no real contact involved. So it's not exactly an incredible feat of athletic proportion when somebody does something like that. But when I watched him, I don't know. He looked a little stiff to me. Not a guy who gets really low in the pass rush like Quinn would talk about. DeMarcus Ware that way. He talked about Randy Gregory getting low, bending around the edge. I don't see that, but I'm not trained either. And we'll see where this goes. But I think he's going to be. There's obviously an opportunity for him to have an effect on the defensive side of the football early on. And geez, when you look at their schedule, you better be rushing the passer right out of the gate when you're playing Tom Brady and Joe Burrow in your first 2 games.
Oh my gosh, yeah. The schedule came out yesterday and all of that. I love how you started the podcast today with, "Hey, you cannot tell anything by what you see out here at one of these rookie orientations," and then about 10 minutes later, you're saying, "But the guy does look stiff to me." And
that was from his tape. That was from his tape, more from his tape than I watched his highlights. And I was like, I don't see a real explosion here. But hey, I think Dan Quinn knows these things, these traits a little better than I do.
All right.
Now, Mike Nolan, maybe not, but I'll give it to Dan Quinn.
No, we do not need
like
to
Mike
have
Nolan.
shots
I know.
at poor Mike Nolan.
That was bad. I think he's still getting paid, so he can take it.
Okay. It's really there's a lot of interesting things about both Sam Williams and then the wide receiver, who I think both of us were paying great attention to. The best thing about, like, if you take a receiver high enough, you can watch them line up and see what kind of separation, look at their route running a little bit, so you can get a little bit of an idea. And I thought for a third-round pick, Jalen Tolbert popped about like you'd hope he would. Getting off the line of scrimmage seems to be, like, his change of direction. There was not the criticism of Jalen Tolbert was, and obviously sometimes guys slip because they played at a smaller school, or maybe they play.
And there was like a million receivers available in this draft.
Part of that, but so with a million receivers, it's good to go in the third round. Right. I think it's a big compliment. But that he's not a natural catcher of the football, that's not a great thing to say about a wide receiver. But not everybody does have. Okay, this guy's got the greatest hands ever. So I was watching that today to see what all he was doing. What I find from a big picture though standpoint about these guys we were looking at today, isn't it interesting to think that you just said it? Dan Quinn tells you, I want Sam Williams. I envision him being a huge help as a pass rush specialist right away. They're really hoping that Jalen Tolbert from South Alabama, the Jaguars, is going to come in and be their third wide receiver. They really need that to happen. And yet their first-round pick, and we kind of brought this up a little bit with Philbin, I think they're kind of like taking a wait and see. We think this is our left tackle of the future. We've given him number 73, but for years, for the most part, maybe they learned this with like Taco or something. Yes, when you get a first-round pick, hey, is this guy expecting him to start? It's like, yeah. And they really have held off saying that about Tyler Smith. Yet the second-round pick and the third-round pick, get him in there.
Well, and nobody should have a better opportunity to play right away and have a big impact than Tyler Smith. There's an obvious position available to him. It's not one that he's really played, but you can argue it's easier to play left guard as a rookie than it would be to play left tackle as a rookie. I think you're going to get more favorable matchups. You've got more help. And so, yeah, I think they're just trying to keep the pressure off of him and not, they know they've created a lot of expectations just by taking him in the first round. And then, Jerry absentmindedly, revealing the draft board that's supposed to be the top secret in the NFL at that time, and showing that they had him higher on their board than two players that, most people projected to Dallas who went ahead of him. But yeah, I think they fully, and if you, like, I talked to Charles Haley after, that playoff loss to the 49ers, and Charles Haley is a really reasonable man. And I say that somewhat in jest. But, he went off on the offensive line about how bad those guys are. And, his criticism was incredibly blunt, and he put it all on the offensive line's failure. And he said, if they don't fix this, then Dak's going to be like Russell Wilson in Seattle, getting sacked more times than anybody in the NFL. And no matter how good you are, you can't overcome that. And I was talking to Nate Newton today. Nate Newton came out for practice. Still looks great. Looks nothing like he did when he was a player. But Nate was saying the same thing. He was like, this offensive line, like, it doesn't matter how great your skill position players are, your receivers, your quarterbacks, your backs. None of that matters if your offensive line is bad. And that's what it was last year. And so Tyler Smith better be playing. He better be part of the reason that offensive line has improved this year, because it's not coming from a different coaching staff. It's got to come from players like him. Yeah. Connor McGovern already failed in that role last year, or they never, would have gone back to Connor Williams. He got a 4-game look during the season, and Connor McGovern was deemed not to be as good as Connor Williams, who they didn't bother to sign, who led the NFL in penalties. And that's the other concern with Tyler Smith is He's had a lot of penalties, and he had a lot of penalties playing guys at Tulsa. What's going to happen when you go to the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, Tulsa is in the AAC, and that's where Cincinnati comes out. There's some talent there, but your point is well taken. And the people I talked to, we talked about like Tyler Smith were a little bit of a bear hugger. It's just not always great. Maybe if you haven't seen a friend in a long time, it's okay to put them in a bear hug. Speaking of Nate, we're going to get to Tyler Smith here in a second. Did you ever find out when he greeted us? He said, "I'm here to watch one man," and I thought he was going to say Tyler Smith, and I'm pretty sure he said Jake Ferguson.
He did say Jake Ferguson, yeah.
The fourth-round tight end out of Wisconsin, 6'5", 245. Did you ever ask any follow-ups of Nate to find out why he was so infatuated with the tight end?
Because he wants to see, again, going to Charles Haley's point, the failure, of the blocking up front was the primary reason the Cowboys, got beat in that playoff game and were so dysfunctional on offense the last 6 weeks of the season. And Ferguson is a guy he wanted to see how well he can block. The one thing he mentioned was, go back to week 1, our tight end misses a block in the open field or it's a touchdown. And I said, yeah, that's true. Was it Schultz? Was it Schultz who missed a block? And I said,
I just assumed.
At the same time, it wasn't Jarwin, was it? It was either one of those.
It was.
Anyway,
he was having hip replacement.
Not at that time he wasn't. and Nate said, hey, all you got to do is get in front of the guy. You don't have to block him as a tight end. Just get in front of the guy and stay in front of him. I want to see if this rookie can do that. And I said, well, it would have been nice if he'd have made a block, in Tampa and Zeke would have scored. At the same time, I think Zeke could have just run the guy over and carried him into the end zone, and he failed to do so. I
think that was Jarwin's fault.
He agreed it was kind of on both of them.
Yeah.
It was on both the tight end and the running back to perform better than they did in that situation. But I think, I think the sense you get from talking to people, whether it was Will McClay mentioned it there in our interview with him, Mike McCarthy mentioned it. Jerry said McCarthy kept talking about it as they were going through the draft. We need to get bigger, tougher, hard-nosed guys, more competitive, more physical. That's where they think they lost that game, and that was where their failure was. And the key to locking all of the incredible potential they have at wide receiver and running back and quarterback is up front. They've got to be dominant up front, and they were nothing close to that most of the year.
Yeah, and one of the guys that they're hoping can help them become dominant moving forward is the first-round pick for the Cowboys, and of course that's Tyler Smith. And during the open locker room portion of today's rookie orientation, Ed Werder and myself and I had a chance to sit down and visit with Tyler Smith, an exclusive on Doomsday.
Cowboys first-round pick.
Just signed.
Yes.
Officially a millionaire.
Let's call this his first interview since signing. I don't know if that's accurate, but he is now on the Doomsday podcast. Congratulations. This is your first practice, and basically the news was breaking during the rookie minicamp.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
What was it like? What was your first day on the field like?
Man, it was great. Like I definitely got introduced to that NFL tempo. Coach Blasco, Coach Philbin, they were getting after it. So it was great. We got a lot of good work in today, quick and concise. And it's definitely it's going to be an adjustment, but I'm happy to rise to the occasion.
What's the biggest thing you noticed right away about the pace of practice? Any major differences, or did it feel pretty normal to all these college practices you've been a part of?
I mean, I come from a tempo team. University of Tulsa, we run a lot of tempo, but I definitely say an individual, the tempo is a lot faster. It's less talking. Like, we do all the talking in meetings before practice, and we get to the field, like, it's action time. Like, we're trying to get reps. And I say that's probably the biggest difference from here to now. But in terms of team is pretty similar. Like, we got to do a little bit of extra running, which is absolutely fine. Like Coach McCarthy says, we're built up on championship conditioning. Like, that's what's going to make the difference. So, I'm going to embrace that. I'm definitely going to get better each day.
You've mostly played tackle.
Yes, sir.
You see the opening and the opportunity to play right away as a rookie at guard, I assume, if you can win the competition there. How big a change is that for you? You're trying to adjust to a new level and potentially a position change at the same time.
I mean, it's definitely a change for sure. Like, in terms of footwork, in terms of steps, in terms of, the leverage you got to play with. But, Coach Philbin and Coach Blasco are doing a fantastic job getting me up to speed. Like, just in a short time that we've been doing Zoom meetings and meeting together, like, I've been taking leaps and bounds. And, like, I'm ready to play. Like, I'm a competitor. I'm always ready to rise to the occasion. And, God willing, like, I'll be out there and doing my thing for sure.
What does it feel like over there, lining up at guard, and you have to communicate with the left tackle? They say they think of you as a left side player. Obviously, right. What's the immediate feeling like when you're over there? Does it feel somewhat natural? I mean, it does kind of feel natural because I played left guard in high school. Things come a little quicker at guard for sure, so you got to be cognizant of that. But, this is day one. It felt really good. Like, we're going to improve a lot more from the day. Like, we just, Rome wasn't built in a day, but, we're trying to build it quickly at the same time. So we're doing a lot of good work, and we're only going to get better with each day. And have you heard from Larry Allen? Have you gotten to visit with him, now that you're wearing his jersey? I haven't had the pleasure of speaking with him. Hopefully soon I can. Like, that would be cool. Like I said earlier, like I got to meet with Michael Irvin. He had me on his podcast, which is really cool. Like we talked, we chopped it up, and that was just, that was a surreal experience talking to a Hall of Famer. Like, he gave me a lot of good information. He's like, young man, like, keep your head down, take care of your family, and let the football take care of everything else. Because, that's what I'm here for. That's my job, to play football. Yeah. That's what I live to do. That's my passion.
Why did you decide to wear 73?
Why did I decide to wear 73? Man, when I got called by the Cowboys, it was funny because they told me, with the O-line here, the way the culture is, like, the O-line wears 70 numbers. Like, the center wears, like 60 or 50, but like guards and tackles got to wear 70s. So they had 71 and 77 available. And, when I seen 73 was available, it was a no-brainer for me because, I knew of Larry Allen. Like, I watched his story on ESPN as a kid. And, like, he was one of my favorite players. That famous, not only was he a monster with the bench press, but, that chase down block just, displayed his athleticism. And, like, I saw a lot of him in me, like, for sure. That's the demeanor I want to play with. That's what I want to bring to the table at guard. So that's kind of why I picked the number for sure. Okay, and he maxed out at about 600 on the bench. What's the most you've ever done? Man, what's the most I ever done? Most I ever did was 405. Like, that was lightweight too. That was lightweight. I could have gone higher. I just haven't done it yet. But, I'm definitely working towards getting better each day for sure. Like, I'm going to get up there. I'm going to try to surpass him. That's going to be a hard mark to reach, but I'm going to try. Tyler, hey, appreciate it.
Good talking to you, Tyler. Yeah. Welcome to the Cowboys.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Sometimes I wonder about, he mentioned his coach is Phil Montgomery from Tulsa. That's his head football coach. That was the offensive coordinator for Art Briles when Baylor was in its heyday of winning all those games, and Phil Montgomery obviously left before that whole scandal. Not to scare everybody, during the Briles era, and Montgomery was a big part of that, they had tackles. One went number 2 overall. Another one was a first-round pick. And they were in the spread, and it didn't work out at all. Now, a lot of teams in the college football run the spread, okay? So you can't just say, Art Briles, nobody that runs his offense is going to have a good O-lineman. I don't think that's fair. But it's interesting when you play in an offense where you just throw it constantly. One of the things that came up, I think Will McClay mentioned it, at some point, or maybe it's Joe Philbin actually who said it, the O-line coach for the Cowboys, was talking about, hey, he needs to have a chance to kind of get up there and try to run over some people in the run game. And the truth is, he comes from a system where he hadn't had a lot of chance to do that. And I'm not saying he can't do that, but that may be part of the
hesitation,
ramping up. Yeah, the hesitation to throw
put
him
expectations
right
on him, and so there was, like I said, a lot of substantial criticism of this pick, and so I reached out to 5 different general managers to get their insights and see what they thought of the Cowboys picking him where they did, and I'll give you a little bit of sampling. The first general manager could not have been more enthusiastic, said, quote, loved him, thought he has the most upside of any offensive lineman in the draft. In 3 years, he said, if he stays healthy, he'll be the best one, the best offensive lineman to come out of this draft if he stays healthy. And then I said, well, the last 3 first-round picks on the offensive line by the Cowboys were all pros. Travis Frederick, Tyron Smith, and Zach Martin. And he said, this GM said, this guy will be an all-pro too. The next GM said Tyler Smith is a really good kid with a high upside, can play guard or tackle, smart, raw, and needs to clean up his techniques causing him to get too many penalties, but he has a high ceiling, just needs to be coached. And then the last two I'll finish with. He's very raw and talented, high ceiling, but may take some time, should be a good pro. Little less enthusiasm than the first guy. And then finally, an AFC general manager said he's athletic, powerful, nasty, needs to mature, and was a bit of an injury risk, but all in all, a good pick. So I would say that's an overwhelmingly positive set of opinions on Tyler Smith from the NFL GMs I talked to. And now maybe there's 28 guys who didn't like him, but
Yeah.
and I just tapped into the 5 who did, but I think that's a fair sampling of general manager opinions of the Cowboys' first-round pick who signed his contract today.
And by the way, for our paid subscribers, Ed's going to name all those GMs behind the paywall. He'll let you know.
I see you looking at my list.
No, Ed, this is. I want to piggyback just a little bit because I talked to one of my guys, one of my people, and it was this one was about. I got two for you. I got one Tyler Smith and then Tolbert, Jalen Tolbert, third-round pick out of South Alabama. This is Tyler Smith, though. Good prospect, played tackle, but could be tackle or guard. Good ceiling, needs technical work and some time, but has good upside profile. It goes along with a lot of what you had. One of my other ones I talked to that was mentioned, bit of a bear hugger. Got to get past that. And then for the wide receiver, who I kind of liked his suddenness. I like, his get off. I thought that was interesting that Mike McCarthy said today that he thought he was a good comparison. Was a combo of CeeDee Lamb and Cedric Wilson.
Body style.
Yeah. Just the body. I thought he was talking about sort of an overall
kind of
player.
The way he plays.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But I thought that was interesting. And if they get a guy that's CD and I like the guy's got a little chutzpah behind him because apparently he said something like something came up about his ceiling and he says. The player Jalen Tolbert tells Mike McCarthy, I think my ceiling's pretty damn high. To which McCarthy says, "Hell yeah." So we had some fun with that. And what was the woman? She did a nice job. I liked her presentation today. What she asked McCarthy about the rookie culture or something. And what did Mike say? We've had like one afternoon together or something. I liked that, though. The rookie culture, liked her presentation, did a nice job. Now, here's Tolbert. Good prospect, size, speed, athletic ability, good movement skills, contributing skill set, actually has the baseball background. This is a guy that, if memory serves correct, I believe he committed to Michigan State coming out of high school, and he wanted to play both sports. And was a really good baseball player, and South Alabama was going to give him that. And you would think, well, why didn't Michigan State? Well, who knows? I mean, sometimes these big schools say, hey, we're bringing you here to play football. Get your rear out here and play football. But I find that a helpful thing, the baseball, because we've seen with Mahomes and others, some of these players that were multi-sport, whether it be college or high school, just – and again, we talk about it mainly from a quarterback standpoint, but I think it applies to other positions as well. That having some of those other sports in your background is helpful.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that people talked about when this draft was over was, did they draft? They seem to draft for need, and one of the things I think. Will McClay has done, the influence he's had is he's convinced Jerry and Steven, to draft the best player available regardless of position. And going into the draft, Stephen Jones, said they didn't really have a must position. And then, first round they take an offensive lineman who can fill the hole at left guard. Second round they take a pass rusher who can replace, Randy Gregory theoretically. And then, to your point about the receiver, Jalen Tolbert, I mean, the Cowboys offer immediate playing time there too because they traded Amari Cooper. They lost Cedric Wilson and Malik Turner in free agency. And then if you look at it, the Cowboys used 11 personnel, which is 3 wide receivers on the field simultaneously at the 7th highest rate in the NFL since Kellen Moore's been the offensive coordinator. So there's going to be a lot of playing time available to somebody else at that receiver position, especially if Michael Gallup's not ready to begin, week 1 or week 2 when they play 2 of their toughest opponents of the year.
No pressure, Jalen. We need you to be the number 2 wide receiver, not just the number 3.
If we could do what Jamar Chase did last year for our week 2 opponent, we'd be pretty satisfied with that. He just outdid Justin Jefferson.
Yeah. And we'll see what James Washington, kind of interesting because he was a speedster and
From the Steelers.
Yeah, the Steelers, but just didn't make much of an impact there. We'll see if he can do that. He's a big rancher. I think he's out running cattle today. I like that about him. He's good. He'll fit in well around here. Because when we finish one of these, people will be, well, why didn't y'all talk about Damone Clark? I don't know if they really talk like that, but real quick, I'll just say, John, and I'll let you handle Damone Clark and Devin Harper if you want. Although I did watch Devin Harper a little bit. I can add to that.
You can have him.
But John Ridgeway, you just heard from Will McClay.
I liked what Will McClay said about Ridgeway.
Yeah, the nastiness.
Yeah.
With the Razorback, and then today it's hard to call anything because they're not tackling to the ground, but let's call it kind of a scoop and score type situation. And even though he's kind of a massive, nasty defensive lineman, I thought he showed some mobility. He picked that ball up and he went running. Now, that was that Harvard running back, the little man.
Harvard, maybe you don't know much about football, but you should be smart enough not to put it on the ground. I think you should know that much about it if you're a Harvard guy.
I wish you would not.
They had a Princeton coach here one time, I think.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. That's right.
That Ivy League stuff has always worked out great for the Cowboys.
They've done. Going back, I'm trying to think. Have they ever had a good Ivy Leaguer? Aaron Shampkin was that youngster's name, the rookie from Harvard, and he was cut.
Put the ball on the ground in a non-contact drill.
Jimmy
was given contact. I will say that for him.
Yeah. But 5'9", 194, Aaron Shampkin, okay?
The asthma field's over there.
That's
the
right.
fumble field is over there.
Okay, now the other ones, I'll take Devin Harper real quick, then I want you to say a word on Damone Clark out of LSU, since you kind of brought his name up and we were kind of taking a peek at him. Obviously, he can't really be involved right now on the field, but he and I have had, similar surgeries, so that's kind of an interesting thing. Devin Harper, linebacker, 6th-round pick out of Oklahoma State. I would just say today, especially for first practice, just extremely active. Like an Oklahoma State player, they play with a ton of speed, and I like to see who was waiting in line to try to take those punts. They had the punt machine going, and we were looking. These guys were
really
struggling.
Windy out there. Yeah.
It was windy, and if number 50, he's like, "Let me get in here," and he jumped in there. I kind of like that, but so I just wanted to mention the Oklahoma State players since we got some pokes that listened to us. All right, take Damone Clark, the 5th-round pick out of LSU, 6'2", 239 pounds.
Yeah, so the Cowboys had a 3rd-round grade on him and got him in the 5th round. And I think, I talked to somebody the other day who was involved in scouting him for the Cowboys, and I said, what do you think of this guy's potential? And he said, to me, the question is, will he stick his face in there? In other words, will he take people on and be physical after just having spinal fusion surgery, or does that forever change his psychology as a football player? I mean, we've seen this happen with Leighton Vander Esch. Is another guy you would ask that question about, how his injury history and spinal column instability and the dangers that poses. How does that affect your psychology as a football player who has to, make tackles with your head and shoulders all the time? I think he was really, like I said, a day 2 prospect who fell in the draft because of his medicals. He has had spinal fusion surgery, was out there on the field. I think most people think he's going to miss most of the season, but the Cowboys don't seem willing to rule out the possibility that he would play at some point this year. And when he played, he was a playmaker. 135 tackles, 15.5 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 4 pass deflections. So he's a very capable player. Played obviously in the SEC for LSU, and in fact, He was the last remaining prospect on the board with an overall draft score of 80+. He enters the NFL with the second highest score of any LSU linebacker over the last 10 years, second only to Devin White of the Tampa Bay Bucks.
Well, that's a good player. Yeah,
he had a 99 score, and so 88's substantially lower, but the next highest.
I'll try to find out also on Damone Clark for our next get-together.
Please, enlighten me.
He would have been recruited and played for Dave Aranda, the Baylor head coach at some point. So we'll maybe check in with Dave Aranda to get his take on Damone Clark. Some teams go to Indy, the combine, and they all look at those x-rays, and they're looking for reasons to perhaps rule guys out. The Cowboys see a bad x-ray, and they're like, hey, they move him up their board.
Property of the Dallas Cowboys t-shirt handed out immediately after that failed physical.
He had spinal fusion surgery. Maybe he can't play again. Third round grade.
Second, if we were more confident he'd play again.
That's right. Need to regenerate a new nerve or whatever. Oh, man. All right. I'm glad we had some technical difficulties with your iPad, but it's now fired up and going again. Any last comments you had from, you have even more notes than I do today.
Well, I try to put together kind of a comprehensive thing.
Love it.
I don't know, what more we can talk about here. I think
just read them. I see about 5,000 words there. Just read it.
That's why my iPad won't turn on. And this is not the first or only entry, by the way.
By the way, lunch brought to us today by Jersey Mike's. By way of
Are you soliciting
Ed
sponsors
Werder.
now?
Sure, if you want to. I love Jersey Mike's.
Yeah, I eat there all the time.
And I get the turkey in provolone, number 7. And I get the works, do no onions, and then I had that one sinking feeling today that I thought somehow they might have put olives on it, and I got worried about that.
No
but anyway,
olives.
Next time you go, if you would get banana peppers for me.
If you ask, you sent me 5 texts about what you wanted. Why couldn't one of them include, I'd like some banana peppers?
I thought that was in the everything.
No, that's not part of the everything.
Mike's Way, they call it.
But that does not include banana peppers nor olives.
Okay, I'll come with you next time.
Please don't.
All right, did you want to read something?
Not really.
Okay,
Did you want me to read something?
No. I do not want to cut us off when you've done great work here, but you've brought it all to the table, and we've it's been a good gathering, and I
think a lot of people said, well, "Are you going to do something, a podcast, a Doomsday podcast, on the draft?" And we like to wait until we can go out there and see these people with our trained eye. Why are you playing with a rubber duck?
Don't. I'm sorry. I don't mean.
I thought you might want to say something about Affleck and see if we can get some kind of deal with them. They got Dion and Saban. Isn't that kind of overdone at this point?
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, and so we'd like to put a keen eye on them. And then there's the other ancillary benefit of getting a Will McClay to come on and give you his appraisal of each guy, and then talk to the first round pick one-on-one.
Yeah.
Or 2-on-1, as the case may be.
I have to say, I appreciate the fact that even though, I haven't been out there a ton of late
Was that your choice?
It's probably, who knows whose choice it was. It was great to be out there.
I think it was mutual agreement.
But I'm just saying, I thought it was nice that it was great to see a bunch of our buddies. And when we go out there and start taking on those little interviews that we do, everybody just kind of, hey, that's Mosley and Werder over there. Let them do their thing.
Especially at training camp. We used to get some great 20-minute interviews.
I used to be horrible about people trying to, if I had some kind of what I thought was an exclusive and somebody else walked up, I did not. That's one thing you and I have in common. We don't always...
We exude the threat of physical violence, I think, if you enter our space at the wrong time.
We both have tempers. I think yours comes to the
I'm
surface
a part
more
Irish
often.
and the other part of me's German, so I'm stubborn and I have a temper. So
Yes,
there you go.
Exactly. All right, Ed, good stuff today. It was a rookie orientation. This is a special broadcast. We look forward to...
Is everyone we do special? Why don't we just do them? I
don't know.
You
This
always
felt
have to
very
say everything's
special.
a special edition. Right? No, this is just what we do.
Thank you to Hodges Capital. Oh, my gosh. Clark and Craig Hodges, two of the best of the business, and we appreciate everybody who's taken a keen interest in the Doomsday podcast. BringTheTasty.com. Our other buddy Rich Cavness, who wrote a great inspirational book, motivational book. Anybody else that wants to spend money with us?
Still waiting for my
Ooh, I got that all boxed up ready for you.
2019 Christmas gift.
Harry's Razors. Yeah, I did. I boxed that. In fact, Meredith was going to throw that out, and I said, no, that's for Ed.
It's not the first time I've lost an award. Okay.
Okay. All right. That is the Doomsday podcast from far north Dallas. And on behalf of Ed Werder, Mark Friedman, it is Matt Mosley. Good night.
There are any number of reasons you might consider selling your home. To move closer to family, live within a smaller budget, or just wanting a change of scenery. Whatever your reasons, having to figure out all the various housing market trends in your area may not be what you signed up for. That's where an agent who is a realtor comes in. Realtors have the expertise to help you find the right price and navigate the process to sell your home in a way that's right for you. That's who we are. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors.
Hey, it's Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, Record Store Day founder Carrie Colleton is joining us to discuss the April 20th RSD special releases.
Plus, we'll talk live with our audience, the Sound Up Pod Squad, and find out who still listens to vinyl. And some updates from the Beatles universe.
Oh, good. Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.